Welcome back to Talk Wordy, my hub for all of the words that I read, write, or otherwise want to yap about. Today, you guys, I've got a very special episode because I am bringing you my first ever author guest on the pod. She is the Amazon best-selling author of multiple books, which are all steamy small towns with big found families. Her latest release, The Elusive Billionaire, the second book in the Happiness Ever After series, is out now. Please welcome Avery Maxwell. Avery, welcome
Hi.
to Talk Wordy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, this has been something that's been on my radar for the last couple weeks, and I've been so excited. Obviously, like a
Yay.
good kind of nervous, but I'm like,
Yeah.
I love talking to people. Obviously, my show is called Talk Wordy, but also I haven't gotten to tell you yet. I finished the arc. Well, I guess it's not an arc anymore since the book is, but oh my goodness. I was giggling. I was kicking my feet. I was sneaking my
Yay.
Kindle to work because I was like, I can't wait till I get home. It's not fair.
Yay. That's so exciting. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're welcome. Okay, so before we get into all of our questions,
Mhm.
I want to start doing this with each of my guests, and I want to do a quick check-in of what we're reading, watching, and listening to. So, lately, reading-wise, I have been reading. I actually just finished Nightshade by Autumn Woods. I don't know if you know that book.
I know.
She was an indie author, and she published a book called Evergreen. I think either 2023 or 2024. She became really popular, but I still feel like not enough people knew about her one book. It was her debut,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken. And so Nightshade was completely new. It was kind of gothic,
Yeah.
crossword clues, kind of a murder mystery. She was trying to figure out she had a stalker, who was it? I was obsessed. I binged it last night. I read this on paper and it felt like I was there in a Scottish castle. Like it was
It's
so
amazing.
good. I'm not going to say how it ended, but what am I supposed to do until July? I have no idea.
That's a
So,
problem that I have. I'm
yeah.
a binge eater. Like when I start a book, I will stay up until 3 in the morning because I get too
Oh,
anxious.
yeah.
I need to know how it ends. I've never been able to put a book down in the middle because I will not sleep. I'll stay up wondering, well, what happened next or where'd they go? So yeah, I stay up and binge.
I was like, I'm a July baby, so I was just thinking to myself, what do you mean I'm gonna have another birthday before this book comes out? That's just mean. Like,
Yeah,
how am I
I
supposed to
know.
overcome that?
We just can't write fast enough.
I know, but it will be well worth the wait. I just know it. And then the book that I'm currently reading, I just started an audiobook of Overdue by Stephanie Perkins. It's so cute so far. I'm like 25% in. Um, it's adorable. But I mean, aside from the many rereads you probably do of your own books, what have you been reading lately?
My publisher just sent me a copy of Madison Score's Royal Icing. I think that's the title. Yes, Royal Icing.
Ooh.
And I just downloaded it, so that's going to be my read tonight. I don't typically read things similar to what I'm writing when I'm in the middle of drafting, but I'm making an exception because it comes out on Thursday and I'm really excited about it. So,
Ooh,
mhm.
that's
So read
awesome.
that one. And listening, does Taylor Swift count?
Absolutely, Taylor
Okay.
Swift
All right. So
counts.
Life of a Showgirl is on a constant loop, and it has been since it came out. I've probably listened to it like 1,000 times. Just it keeps looping in the car, in here, when I'm writing. It's just always on.
What I have to know, because I know my top few songs keep
Okay.
switching out. What are
Mhm.
your current favorites?
I love Father Figure.
Yes!
Hmm.
Yes!
I
Okay,
love that one.
amazing.
I really, really love that one. I also like Canceled.
Ooh.
And I do love Fate of Ophelia.
Yeah.
But then Opalite's good too. My boys get really offended by wood. They don't want me to play that one with them in the room, which fair. I get it. They're football fans, like they're all like hardcore football, and they're like, that's just we can't. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
They know
Um,
what's going on.
they do, yeah. Well, my twins are 13 and they were like a little off, but my 15-year-old was like, absolutely not. But yeah, Father Figure is probably my favorite. I do like it'll play and I'll like hit the back button to listen to it again.
Oh, yeah.
So it's kind of a go through. Yeah, I love them. I love them all.
Yeah, they're so good. She honestly, I think a lot of people are like underappreciating this album, and maybe it's just because it's so new.
Hmm.
And I feel like this happens with every album she puts out. Once she puts out her next album,
Yeah,
people are gonna appreciate it more.
absolutely. They'll be like, "Oh, we've always loved it." When in reality, I saw you post something four
Oh
months ago,
yeah.
said how much you hated it. Yeah, it always happens with the music.
Yeah.
I I've been a Swiftie since my daughter was so Speak Now was the
Yes.
first concert we went to. My daughter and I have been to every tour since, and I'm telling you, the Eras tour just like it solidified it for me. I will
Oh yeah.
never not be a Swiftie.
And then I don't know if we did we cover watching? I feel like I might have accidentally skipped over it, but watching
Oh,
wise, I'm in the middle of a Stranger Things rewatch because season 5, the first part comes out, I think on Thanksgiving or like right around there. I'm so excited. But last night I finally watched Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein.
oh,
Oh my gosh. Listen, I'm not a classics reader, but one of my all-time favorite books is Frankenstein. I have absolutely obliterated every single copy I have of it. So I need to go get like a special edition one. I was fiending for this movie and he delivered. It was incredible. Was it biblically accurate to the book? Not quite, but the twists that he made on it were so good. I have a feeling I'm going to rewatch it at least 2 more times, like
it was
before this
fun.
time next week. It was so good. I cannot recommend it enough. Are you much of a TV movie person or
I just don't really have time, and I find like when I do have the time, I prefer to read. So it's like this
good for
weird
you?
issue. But so there are sometimes it's the only time I can really spend with my husband. We've got 4 kids, so there's always stuff going on. But we just finished the third season of The Diplomat on
Ooh,
Netflix
okay.
with Carrie Russell, who I have like the biggest girl crush on. I think I've loved her since Felicity. Like I just think she's so cute and she's so good in this. And I don't typically like political thrillers, but this one is really well done. Like the storytelling is like I fangirl over the storytelling. But I am a Bravo fan too. So
Oh
I
yeah.
love Below Deck. Anytime Aisha is on a season, I will watch it because that girl makes me laugh every time she opens her mouth. My
I'll
husband
have to.
says he doesn't like it, but every time it's on, I find him in the kitchen, like peering over
Oh
in
yeah.
the
They
room.
always do that with every, whatever chick flick we put on or,
Yeah,
scary thriller. He's like, what
absolutely.
is that?
Yep, that's what he does. It's so funny.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, let's get into it a little bit. Obviously, you're here to, talk wordy about your book that just came out and all of your other books. Like, first of all, your, I almost said discography, but your catalog is massive, which is such an accomplishment. Congratulations on
Thank
all of
you.
your books, but especially the latest one because I loved it.
Yeah.
Um, Tell me a little bit about like your author origin story. Like, how did you get into writing and publishing?
So it started during COVID, and we had just moved from Boston to North Carolina, and then the world shut down. And so I didn't have any friends here. We're 12, 13 hours away from home. My kids had never really been, 3 of the kids had never really been on computers before. And all of a sudden, they were tasked with being online on these Chromebooks for 6 hours a day. And 2 of them are in first grade. It's just not feasible. So I was going from 4 different rooms because they were in 4 different classes, trying to keep everybody online, trying to figure the technical stuff, which I have no idea about, making sure that they were actually paying attention and not hiding under the table playing with a dog, like all these things. And it ended up being all day long of just me running room to room with people screaming, Mom, Mom, Mom. And I really became the worst version of myself that I've ever been. Like we were sitting at dinner one night and I just kind of had a breakdown because I yelled at somebody for something that they didn't deserve to be yelled at. And I just realized that this whole thing was not working for my family. And so I spoke with my husband and we just decided to put our family first. And so I called the school district and I said, listen, this is just not going to work. This is what I'm going to do. And so they did reading, writing, they did math, and then we would do like some kind of project, either baking or like a craft project, something every day. And then I would turn it into the school and whatever they wanted to do with it, they could do with it. I don't think they even looked at it, to be honest. But um, when the kids got down, I like the little boys, they were just figuring out reading. So I'd read to them and then they had to draw pictures like what they thought the moral of the story was. And so while they were doing that, I sat down and just started writing. I didn't know for the first couple of weeks like what I was writing. It just like if you look back at that, I was writing in a like longhand, and if you look in that notebook, it's a mess of like the beginning of what ended up being Cross My Heart, and then it would be like something that's kind of like a journal entry, and then there was like random poems, and there was just it was all mixed together, but it all kind of had the same vibe. And after a couple of weeks, I was like, oh, I'm like maybe this will be a story. And so I just let it go. I focused on like the two characters and I just wrote. And before I knew it, like I had the whole story done. And I kind of was like, oh, well, yay me. That's great. And I wasn't going to do anything with it. But I had a friend in Boston who had been a development editor and she convinced me to let her look at it. And when she came back to me, she basically said, this is too good just to sit here. So here's what we're going to do. And I was like, no, it doesn't need to be published. It was just, I did it. It's great. And a lot of back and forth, she pushed me, and I finally just hit publish. And I thought that was the end of it. And I was really proud of myself because for the first time in years, I had done something that wasn't part of being mom and it wasn't part of being John's wife. And, it was something just for me. And I was really, really proud of that. But then readers started like asking for the next book. And I didn't know that there was a next book. Like I just thought that it was like a one and done. And I really looked out because people had found it. And so what happened was I went back and reread the book and I was like, oh, there's not just one book here. There's 9 books. Like I just created like an entire series without knowing it. And so I just started writing. And by the third book, I was gaining a lot of traction. And by like the fifth book, I had a publisher and then I got an agent and everything just kind of snowballed from there.
Mhm.
And we haven't looked back. The second year, we turned our dining room into an office for me, and it's become a full-time career since then.
That's
So
awesome.
from COVID, and so in 2020, since then, I'm now writing my 18th book and still
Gosh,
going.
18. That's
Yeah,
incredible. I know I was counting your catalog and I was like, we're at like 17 or 18 now.
yeah.
That's awesome.
I know it's
Um,
crazy.
so that is so cool that so you were not like doing any kind of marketing or anything. It just people found you
Not with the
organically.
Yeah, with the first one, I put it on, I think, like I had met a couple of, when I decided to publish, I joined all these groups about self-publishing. And
Yeah.
um, people said to put it on Booksprout. And so I put it on Booksprout, and it really, I think it's called Booksprout. I haven't actually been on there in a long time. I think it's called Booksprout. Anyway, put it on there, had some people read it, and then it was kind of word of mouth. It got out. And because I didn't really run any ads until like book 3.
Hmm.
So books 1 and 2 were just word of mouth. And then, I had a reader say, let's do a street team for you. And I was like, oh, let me Google what a street team is.
Yeah.
Like I literally had no idea. So after book 1, when I decided I was going to write book 2, my husband really sat me down. He's like, if you're going to do this, like it has to be a business. Like you have to go full in. And so he was the one who said, you have to spend money to make money. Because up until that point, I had just taken $500 from our like family account and did the cover, the editing very inexpensively. And so when I started making money, I put everything back into having that first book re-edited. Then I had the covers redone. And so for a full almost 2 years, every cent I made went back into helping me grow.
Hmm.
So that the first couple of books, it was newsletter swaps and, whatever I could kind of do like inexpensively.
Yeah.
And it just caught on. But by book 3, I had a pretty loyal readership and they've been amazing. They've followed me from every book and they've watched me grow. And the funniest thing, like when you look at some of my reviews, they'll be like, this is not the same author that wrote Cross My Heart. And I'm like, it's
Yeah.
not, because I just didn't know anything when I started. And so during that whole period of the first 2 years, I was taking every class I could take, like trying to learn everything I didn't know because I literally jumped in head first and just was drowning trying to figure out the right way to do everything. But so my days went from being stay-at-home mom to, stay-at-home mom from 6 to 6 basically. And then, well, not 6. My husband did take over the morning routine at some point, but I write from 8 at night to 3 in the morning. And then I do the mom job. My husband would get them when they went back to school. He'd get them after school. And then I do mom stuff and business stuff during the day. And then I was always with them when they got home from school. But it was not sustainable. I was working like 18-hour days and
Yeah.
I couldn't do that for a long time, but I wouldn't change anything because it definitely helped my trajectory. And I'm where I am now because of the hard work that I did early on.
Yeah.
I just wish that I had done a little more research before hitting publish.
Mhm.
If I spent a little time just learning before, I wouldn't have made so many costly errors, but it's all part of the process.
I was gonna say, I really love hearing about your journey just because I think it helps our listeners, especially those who are authors or want to be authors.
Mhm.
It reminds them like that it's okay to have this like messy era, especially at
Yeah.
the start when you're just dipping your feet in the water and trying to, keep your head on your shoulders
Yeah.
with trying to figure out everything. Because there's, especially with self-publishing, there's so many variables that now you've become responsible for. And I like hearing how, part of the money you put into it was to get a book re-edited. I think a lot of
Mhm.
authors, myself included, sometimes we get caught up on like, oh my gosh, I found a typo in a
Yeah.
book I've hit publish on. Like,
Mhm.
I can never go back. I mean, obviously, maybe don't republish a book if there's one typo. It's okay. It's not
Yeah.
the end of the world. But knowing that, like, if you really are wanting more from a book that you've already published, you can go back. You can,
Yeah.
fix it a
There's
little bit.
And that being said, there's so many times that I want to go back in my first like 4 or 5 books, I want to completely overhaul. At this point in time, it's not the best use of my time.
Yeah.
So as much as like I look at that first and second book and know that I'm leaps and bounds better than I was in my craft than I was with those books, I don't touch them intentionally because my time is better spent on new material.
Hmm.
And one of the things that readers always notice from me is the growth from book to book. Like
Yeah.
each book gets better because I am putting in the time to learn something new that I maybe what didn't master in the last book. So like this one was working when I did The Elusive Billionaire, one of the things I was working on was grounding, making sure that every single scene the reader knew exactly where they were
Hmm.
as soon as the scene opened. And it's little things like that that make the story so much more deep and compelling. But it's all these little things that you just don't know until you get into it. And you start working with a really good editor who can point out things that you can improve on. So as much as I'd love to go back and redo those books, I don't.
Yeah. But I,
When I first did it, I did because I had spent I think $200 on editing, and it was very clear that they needed to have another go around. Um, but it's still my first book is still one of my best-selling books. So as much as I want to touch it, I just let it be.
yeah. But I think it reflects the journey that you've been on. That's a story in
Yes,
and of itself, which,
yeah,
you know, and I mean, something that we may be insecure about as far as like a debut book, another reader could be like, that's my favorite,
yeah. Oh my
which,
gosh, every time I mention that I want to do something with it, readers really get upset. Like that's the book they found me on. They love it the way that it is. And it was actually Taylor Swift who helped me realize that once you put something else, it's no longer yours. Like
Mhm.
let them have it and let them appreciate it for what it is. And as they read along, my backlist, they'll see the growth. And that's important to me too. It's, not just putting out a great product, but showing them that I am working really hard with each one to get better. But things like the cover, my first 4 books, I think I've had 4 or 5 different covers because I just didn't know what I didn't know.
Mm,
And I think things like that, as you learn, you feel more comfortable and you get more confident in what your voice and your brand is. Those are the kinds of things that's okay to change and make them fresh again.
yeah, I love that. Okay, so tell me also your writing timeline, your process, like from if you want to do either first draft or first idea to when the book releases? Like, what does that typically look like for you?
Okay, my idea typically starts around the 75% mark of the previous book I'm writing. So I usually get to around like I got with the Elusive Billionaire, I got 75% in and I was starting to take notes for the next book that I'm writing. And it's actually I'm working on two books right now, which has never happened before, but they're both really loud. So I'm taking notes on all of them. And then I spend about 2 weeks building the characters where I do, I figure out what their arc is going to be. I figure out what their wound is going to be. The wound for me is like the big one. Once I know the character's wound, I can build out the rest of their character. I do enneagrams for the characters. I do the enneagrams against each other so I can know what their natural conflicts will be. I build out like what they look like physically, what they'll sound like. As I've written more books, I've started to realize I need to think about audio much sooner than I had been previously. So when I sit down to build a character, I really think about what they'd sound like when they're talking. And so then that helps when I'm writing because then I hear their voice in their head, so I'll know if it sounds like something they'd say or not. So I spent about 2 weeks doing that, and then I have major plot points or beats that I want to hit, but I know nothing else. I sit down and I start writing the story from start to finish. And I know some people really jump around. They can write different scenes and then piece them all together. My brain doesn't work that way. It works very linearly. So drafting is the hardest part for me, and that usually takes about 2 months. But it's a steaming pile of crap. Like you could never, no one could ever read it. It's so bad that I won't even let my editor, who I love and adore, even have a peek at a paragraph because most of it doesn't make sense. It's bare bones. It's how they got from their meet cute to their happily ever after, but there's no emotion in it. There's no descriptions. There's nothing that really makes it a book at that point. And once I'm done with that crappy version, then I do 7 more drafts, like full drafts, where one is I'm adding in emotion, one I'm adding in descriptions, one I'm checking to make sure that each scene is grounded, one I'm checking to make sure that they don't have blue eyes on one page and green eyes on the other page. Um, and each time I'm rewriting as I'm going because sometimes I'll things won't make sense as I'm reading it, or I'll find a plot hole and I'll have to rework everything. And then my last step is I print it out. I think I showed you this before, but I print it out at Staples and I read it out loud with like multiple colored pens. And anything that doesn't sound right, because when you hear things, it definitely is different than when you're reading them. So I'll go through and I'll read it out loud and I'll mark anything that's not right, any changes that I need to make. And once I'm done with that, then I send it to an editor. She does a critique edit where it's just major story issues. Like if there's a big plot hole or something that I missed, she'll give me information on. She'll also tell me like where I can cut back a little bit because my books tend to be pretty long. She'll tell me where I can cut back, and sometimes she'll tell me like I need more of this, like or we need another chapter here. Um, and then comes back to me. I work on that. It goes for a line edit for about 2 weeks. Comes back to me. I go through all of the line edits. Then it goes for a copy edit. It comes back to me. I do another edit. Then it goes to a proofreader, back to me, and then to ARCs. So it's a long process. Like my
Yeah.
editing process is very detailed and in depth. And there's most of my author friends could not work that way. But for me, my brain really works well with each draft picking out one thing to focus on. Because if I'm going through and I'm trying to figure out, like, is this scene emotional enough? I'm an emotional writer. So when I'm writing, I base my story on how my heart's responding. Like, if it starts beating fast or I'm getting sweaty, then I know I need to bring in one of my clown characters. And those are like my grandfathers or a kid or something to like lighten the mood. And so it it doesn't always work well when I'm like kind of piecing things together. Does that
Mhm.
make sense? So
Yeah.
like if I was trying to do work on an emotional draft and making sure that their hair color is right, my brain won't pick up on both. It's like one or the other. So I
Yeah.
end up just doing multiple drafts.
I think that's so interesting though, because I think a lot of writers, especially on the first draft, they feel like they have to come up with everything. Whereas even if the first draft you create is like a steaming hot pile of garbage, at
Yeah,
least it's a draft. At least it's
right.
complete. I kind of, the way you were talking about it, it reminds me of people who either pick out their entire outfit, jewelry, shoes, like everything included the night before,
Hmm.
versus your approach almost sounds like, okay, here's my base layer. I'm gonna wear this, I've got jeans and a t-shirt. Okay, how can I dress it up? Am I gonna wear a jacket? Am I gonna do necklace, big earrings, small earring? Like that makes me think of all the little ways like, okay, is this scene emotionally charged enough? And only focusing on that aspect for that draft, I think it's so smart because it simplifies an otherwise big process.
It was so long where I was going through and I was like, I felt like such a failure because I wasn't as efficient as many of my author friends were. I felt like I really was doing myself a disservice and I was pushing myself into these boxes that I didn't fit in. And so it was actually my editor who was like, why are you trying to be this other person? You're not that person. You don't write the same stories. You are your own person. Let it happen the way that it happens. And it was really giving myself permission to write a really bare bones, crappy version and being okay with that because I always knew that I flourish in the edits. That's where my story comes alive. It has always been that way. So why was I putting so much pressure on myself to make that first draft so perfect when literally I just need a blueprint of what the story is supposed to be? And
Yeah.
so that's what my first draft is. It's just a blueprint. It's the basic mechanics of a story. And each draft that I go through is when I make it shine. Like each draft has its own purpose and each draft, and I really like it. And I can go through a draft relatively quickly because now I'm just making the story better. I'm taking out what doesn't work, I'm adding in things that don't work. And so, like, my first draft will be like, let's say it's like 90,000 words. By the time I'm done, the book will be like this one, I think was 140,000 words. So it's really, I don't put any pressure on the first draft to be any kind of word count or any kind of
Hmm.
anything because I know I'm going to be adding in all of the good stuff. I think of it as like when you're baking. The first draft is really just a flour and it's nothing. You can't make anything with just flour. Like, so each draft is adding in the sugar or the vanilla or all those pieces that really something come alive. So it was really letting go of that pressure on myself. I'm really, really hard on myself. I always have been. I probably always will be, but giving myself permission to just get the bones out has made my process so much easier.
Yeah. Speaking of pressure, is there something that you as an author, like, I mean, beyond the pressures of like, I want this first draft to be good, and it seems like you've been able to kind of repeal that a little bit. Is there something that in your author journey, like you've noticed you like maybe still or have a new struggle with?
I think each book is a new struggle, and I design it that way because when I finish a book, I then meet with my editor and I'm like, okay, let's talk about one thing that I can do better in the next one. And so she typically goes through my reviews and she'll pull out like whatever the main concept is. And sometimes it will give us like, okay, well, people hated the heroine because she was too much or whatever. So like, okay, how can we fix that? And she only brings it to me if it's a valid point.
Mhm.
Sometimes reviews are just they're not meant for me, and
Yeah.
that's fair. That's fine. But if she sees something in reviews that happens consistently, which is something that I could work on, then she'll bring it to my attention. The other times she'll just be, okay, well, you've got this down. Now let's work on this. And she'll give me something and she'll give me a bunch of learning materials. And so before I start writing, I'll go through and I'll read all this information. I'll write practice passages, trying to make sure that I have a full understanding of what she wants me to learn before I start writing. And so my goal with each book is to master that one thing that we've decided I could do better on.
Mhm.
And my fear was always that, okay, I'll learn one thing for this book, but because I write so quickly, what if I forget it? That hasn't happened so far. She's like, by the time you're done a 120,000 word book, you have that down. Now when you work on the next one, you're building on that. And so for me, a book is a success if I've mastered that one thing that we focused on.
Mhm.
And because reviews are fickle and ranking you never can count on. So for me to succeed is to make sure that each book is technically better than the one before. And the way I do that is working with my editor. It's a team process. It really is writing a book. And so making sure that each thing I do, each book I write has one thing that I can be proud of.
Yeah, I love the intentionality behind like your approach to writing
Mhm.
the next book. Because I think sometimes we get caught up in like, oh, they didn't like this. I'm going to make something that they'll like. You
Mhm.
don't know what they're going to like or not until
Right.
it's already out and it's just going to bog you down. So
Yeah.
I love that.
I have a tendency to want to do everything perfect right away. And writing has really helped me realize that you cannot learn everything all at once. Like you
Yeah.
just can't. So really breaking it down and mastering one thing per book has really saved my mental health, I think, because I don't have all that pressure. Like it has to be perfect. No, it just has to be a little bit better than the one before.
So I want to talk both about your recent release
Mhm.
and maybe if you have anything for us, the one that's coming after it. So
Okay.
let's start with Elusive Billionaire. So the Elusive Billionaire, again, giggled and kicked my feet all through the night. I absolutely loved it. Um, so, like I loved the cozy vibes. I loved the angst between them. It was so well written. But instead of me blabbing, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about the Elusive Billionaire or just the entire setting that the series takes place in?
Well, it takes place in Happiness, Georgia, and the first book had us arriving in Happiness, Georgia, because the grandfather had passed away. And in his will, he had basically given both of the boys a job to do. And then the first book, it was Braxton, and Braxton had to go to Happiness, Georgia to fix the heart and soul of the town. Well, he finds out pretty quickly that the heart and soul of the town is Madison, who ends up being his heroine. And with this book, The Elusive Billionaire, he is the half brother of Braxton, and he follows with their nephew because that's the only family they've ever had was Braxton, Grayson, and Sage. And so he learns pretty quickly that he can't be without his brother and his nephew. And that means he has to be in this small town that he kind of hates because everybody knows everything and they don't shy away from commenting on anything. Um, and he meets Savvy on his first night there, and they find out pretty quickly that they're going to be enemies. And that's where the story takes place. They're enemies with benefits, and they hate the way that they love each other. And it takes a lot for them to figure it out. And once he learns her secret, he goes full on enemy. Like he despises her. He packs up, heads back to California for 6 months because he just cannot deal with her betrayal. And when he comes back, she shows up on his doorstep in the middle of a hurricane and they get stuck together. And so you get the little forced proximity, and he kind of finds out some of her secrets. And once he does, he's pretty all in pretty quickly. Um, and then it's you have that constant push and pull between them because as much as he wants her, he doesn't want her, and she's trying to figure out all her stuff. And then the townspeople get involved, and I think one of my favorite scenes is the line dancing, where he's this suited up billionaire and he is a really terrible dancer.
Yeah.
And one of the things he has to do to win her over in front of the town is win this line dancing competition. And so when he realizes he can't learn how to line dance properly, he just does his own thing. And it was not what I was expecting. I had a whole plan in my head when I was writing, and he basically said, hold my beer, and went in a completely opposite direction. And that's Grayson. So
I love when characters just kind of hop off the page and say, hey, you can rest for a second. I got this.
yeah.
That hold my beer moment is one of the best feelings as a writer.
Yeah.
And I loved that scene. I also loved, because let me tell you, I will say sometimes I can be a cynic about, oh, enemies in a contemporary. What does that
Hmm.
look like? Because obviously in a contemporary book, you're not gonna, unless it's like a mafia or dark romance, you're not gonna like
Yeah.
pull a knife on somebody. But when I found out what the secret was, I was like, oh yeah, we would square up. I would
Yeah.
be throwing hands. Like, yes, that
Mhm.
is my enemy. Um, and so I was like, wow, she did that. And I think
They
it's rare to see enemies with benefits too. So I was giggling. I was
Yeah,
having a ball.
they hated each other so much, but they there was this chemistry between them that they just could not stay away from. And this is going to be a very weird comparison, but I think of like my twins who they hate, like they fight nonstop, but then
Mhm.
they want to have like a three sibling sleepover, and I'm like, you were just throwing punches a minute ago, like
Yeah.
what? And so I did kind of take that dynamic a little bit. And I'm like, okay, they really hate each other, but they also really love each other.
And
And
they just
so during
work.
the day is when they're going to fight. And then he just shows up at her door every night because he can't not.
Hmm.
And I think it worked really well for them. Enemies to Lovers is one of my favorite to read, but I don't write it very often because some of my friends do it so well that I'm always afraid I'm going to ruin it. But Savvy and Gray didn't give me a choice. It was like every time I tried to like soften them a little bit or make things a little smoother, they just like, no, no, like we are full on enemies. We are going
Yeah.
to hate each other until we can't possibly anymore. And I think we did that.
Yeah. Now, obviously, we see those two, together because obviously they have that push and pull chemistry. But
Mhm.
um, what can you say about the two leads, like as individuals? Like, how did you come up with their characters? Like, how do you, as the author, like see them individually? Because I know a lot of authors are like, those are my babies. Like,
Yeah.
how do you, obviously, like with what you were saying about like modeling their kind of like rough and tumble, but then they like just work well together. Like you pulled that from your twins. But like, how do you see them as individual characters?
So I really got to know Gray very well in the first book, and Savvy too, but Savvy wasn't, she had a different role in the first book. Like she was the friend that everybody could rely on and she was always there. And then in The Elusive Billionaire, you find out why she's that way. And it's a very it was a very specific reason for her. And you don't really understand that in the first book. Whereas Gray, I learned his wound pretty quickly. Like he had this family, his family life was not great, but he had this nuclear family with his brother and nephew. And I knew that the brother moving across the country was going to be a big thing for him. But he was also just this grumpy guy who like just seemed really hurt all the time. Like every time like he lashed out, like you knew it was coming from a place of pain. And then with Savvy, she was just so broken. And I'm a fixer. So I just wanted to fix her. Like once I learned when I did the character work for these two and I realized where her pain points were, all I wanted to do was fix her and
Yeah.
just give her a happily ever after. And the only way to do that was to break down her walls with a wrecking ball. And
Mm.
Gray was that wrecking ball. Like he went at her nonstop until she literally was like, okay, I can't hold up my walls anymore. And that's the kind of relationship I love. I love when he sees her and he just wants to make things easier for her. But at the same time, like he understood that he couldn't be the one to fix everything for her, and Gray was also a fixer. So that was really hard for him. So it was a really big growth moment for the two of them where she had to be her own hero and he had to let her.
Mhm.
So that was kind of like the dynamic that I went to with both of them through the whole thing was like her figuring out how to be her own hero and him figuring out how not to overstep the boundaries and do everything for
The
her.
dynamic between them was so good. But I also love just evaluating the two leads as individuals. Should for some reason the writer be like, nah, they're not going to be together. I was like,
Yeah.
what do you mean? Okay, so like, what can you tease us with regarding book three? Where are you in your process?
I'm a little less than halfway through my first draft. So Valen and Clover knew each other when they were children,
Mhm.
and they got separated, and she has never understood why. So she's written in these letters all these years and never heard from him, and then he shows up as her bodyguard. And I'm writing a road trip right now with them and Chief, who's a meddling grandfather character, and a giant dog named Rex. And they're in a small town in Vermont on their way to figure out their past. And they're a lot of fun. Clover's a scaredy cat. She's scared of everything, and Valen's not scared of anything. And he is trying to figure out where everything went wrong.
Hmm.
And it's a lot of fun.
I love a bodyguard romance. Ooh,
Yeah.
spectacular. Give me 14. Thank you so much for coming on the pod. This was absolutely wonderful. I loved getting to talk a little bit more in depth about you and your process as an author, your latest release, all of your books. Oh my gosh, you guys, you need to go check out her entire backlog. So, last question for you. Where can our listeners find you and find your books?
The easiest place is either Amazon or my website. So my website is just averymaxwellbooks.com. And on Amazon, you just type in Avery Maxwell and they'll all populate for you
And
right there.
also, this is such a like web girly comment of me. I've told you this before, but your website is beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so, oh my gosh, like it's a dream author website. I feel like I could get lost in it for like half an
Yeah.
hour.
I'm so happy. I just had it redone. So I'm so happy that you saw it now and not the mess it was before. But thank you. That's been a work in progress for a while, and I'm really proud of how it turned out. And I can take absolutely no credit for it because I don't even know how to update it right now. We're in a learning curve where I'm trying to figure out how to navigate it, but it's very pretty.
Yeah, no, it's gorgeous. You guys go visit her website, go find all of her social media channels, link up with her, follow along with her publishing journey, and obviously go read all of those
Yeah,
books. I feel
please
like
do.
you've got reading material for the next like year plus, unless you're like a super fast reader. That's not me, I'm a slow reader, but again, Avery, thank you so much for coming on
Thank
the
you for
pod.
having me.
Thank you so much to all of you guys who are listening or who are watching. I can't wait to bring you some more author guests. I'm so honored that you agreed to be my first.
Of
This was
course.
so special.
Oh.
Yeah, and so until next time, I will see you guys in the next one.